There are moments that split your life into before and after. For Malock, it was 8:03 a.m., a cold Sunday morning at the annual church camping trip. Still half asleep, he picked up a call from an unknown number. On the other end of the line, the voice of the woman he had loved, built with, sacrificed for. "I'm at the airport. I've moved all my things out. I'm flying back to Ghana and I'm not coming back." No warning, no goodbye, just betrayal, cold and clean. In that moment, something inside Malock broke, and something stronger began to take its place. He didn't know it then. But years later, he would see her again. In an airport, alone, different. And this time, it would be him walking away without a second glance. This is the story of how betrayal tried to break a man, but only sharpened him for the greatness he was destined for. Now, let's continue with part 2 of this epic saga. 2 years before her graduation, Malock knew it was time to make a move. Not just any move. A move that could change everything. A move that could finally show his wife and himself that they could build a future beyond struggle, beyond survival. For months he planned meticulously, researching, saving, mapping every detail. Because this wasn't just a vacation. This was his war against the past. This was a mission to show her and to prove to himself that he could build something beautiful that lasted. He waited patiently for her next long break from school. And when the day finally came, he simply said, "Pack a bag. We're out of here for the next 10 days. She stood there, confused, reluctant, second-guessing, as if trusting him was asking too much. "Where are we going?" she asked, suspicion lacing her voice. "Babe, just trust me," he said softly, calmly. A plea wrapped in casual words but carrying the weight of a lifetime of broken trust. Trust didn't come easily to her, especially not in an Americanized man like Malock. Not a man raised by a single mother, an auntie, and a grandmother. Not a man who had no blueprint for leadership, no visible lineage of strong male protectors. She grew up surrounded by examples, fathers, uncles, big brothers, men who led decisively, men who protected and provided without excuse, men she measured Malock against, often without realizing it. Every time he stumbled, every decision she didn't agree with, she made a silent strike against him in her mind. A mental tally sheet of his shortcomings, forgetting, or maybe not understanding at all, how hard he was fighting to break the generational curses he was born into. "Make sure you grab your passport," he said, summoning the Uber. This wasn't just a weekend getaway. This was something bigger. The ride to the airport was heavy, silent. She stared out the window, avoiding his glances, trying to hide her unease. But he could feel it. He could always feel it. The anxiety, the fear, the quiet calculations ticking in her mind. The look she gave him in the Uber was a look Malock had seen before, a look he had come to know all too well. It was the same look she gave him during one of the lowest points of their marriage, when they were forced to move into a run-down extended-stay hotel. It wasn't entirely his fault. Back then, they had been living in a house with his father and brothers. The landlord promised repairs, promised to fix the leaks, the wiring, the infestation problems. But after months of broken promises, Malock's family decided enough was enough. They withheld rent payments, trying to force the landlord's hand. It backfired. The landlord took them to court for breach of contract. They lost, And just like that, they had to scatter. No backup plan, no safety net. Malock and his wife, only a year into their marriage, found themselves living in a dingy extended stay hotel. The kind where roaches crawled along the walls at night. The kind where you kept your shoes on inside the room. The kind where every flicker of a shadow made you feel like you were sinking deeper into the mud. She never forgot it. Neither did he. It wasn't the roaches that broke something between them. It was the helplessness, the humiliation, the feeling that he couldn't shield her from life's blows, that when the walls fell, she was exposed to the dirt and decay just like he was. Even though the eviction wasn't from his negligence, he carried the guilt like a stone tied to his back. And from that moment on, he could see it in her eyes whenever the winds of instability blew. "You're not strong enough to protect me." That memory never really left. It rode silently in the Uber with them now, all the way to the airport as she stared out the window, trying not to look at him. He watched her now in the back seat of the Uber, anger simmering just below her surface, and a sadness took root in his chest. He knew she didn't trust him the way she trusted her father, her brothers. He knew he wasn't them. He wasn't raised with blueprints. He was building from scratch, learning manhood by trial and fire. Still, he stayed silent, chose peace, because he didn't bring her here to argue. He brought her here to heal. "You've been working so hard these last few years toward your medical degree," he finally said. "I just wanted to show you my appreciation. I wanted you to breathe for a while. I understand that. But where are we going?" She persisted, still looking out the window, still measuring, still doubting. "We're going to St. Lucia," he said, a small smile tugging at his mouth. She sighed deeply. "We don't have money for that." Her voice carried not anger but fear. "Yes, we do," he said simply, because this time he had planned for everything. What she didn't know, what he didn't tell her, was that he had been saving for months. Over $30,000 quietly tucked away. And he had spent $17,000 on this trip. A reckless move for some, a deliberate healing move for him. Because years earlier, when he was just a boy stationed in Germany, he had learned the cruelest lesson about trust. At 17, he left home to join the army, running not toward glory but away from chaos, away from instability, away from broken promises. Every month, faithfully, he sent a portion of his army checks back home to Atlanta, to a bank account he opened under his mother's care, trusting, believing, building for a future he couldn't yet see. 3 years later, when he called home, full of hope, ready to come back for 2 weeks of rest, his world shattered. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," his mother said nervously. "What's wrong, Mom?" he asked. "There's not enough money in the account to buy your ticket home." "What do you mean?" "I've been sending money every month." Silence, then guilt. "I spent it, all of it." She didn't call him. He called her. He reached out. And the only thing waiting for him was betrayal. The mother who was supposed to protect his dreams had spent them, wasted them, gone without warning, gone without apology. He hung up the phone. No goodbye, no forgiveness, because something in him broke that day that would never fully heal. He learned, nothing lasts. No one protects you. Trust is a lie. And for the next 14 years, he lived like a man who expected everything to vanish, blowing through money, blowing through relationships, always keeping himself moving, never rooted long enough to be robbed again. But now that he was married, he wanted to be different. He wanted to be the man who stayed, the man who built something that lasted, the man who protected what he loved. That's why he saved the $30,000. That's why he spent $17,000 on a trip most people would call foolish. Because it wasn't just a trip. It was redemption. At the airport, when they approached the Delta One counter, his wife scolded him gently. "You can't use that line, it's for first class only." He smiled, patient. "It's all good, I got you." And he did. At the gate, when they called for first-class boarding, she stayed seated, still expecting the rug to be pulled out, still not ready to believe he could deliver something different. Until he took her hand and led her forward without saying a word. On the plane, she finally began to relax, reclining fully, sleeping soundly. When the meals came, he accepted hers quietly, laid it gently on her table without waking her, choosing again to serve her without demanding anything in return. When they landed, a smiling man greeted them at customs, a private driver in a BMW X5, part of the meticulous planning Malock had spent months orchestrating. They stopped at a roadside fruit stand, and for the first time he saw her face light up. Coconuts, avocados, pineapples, sugarcane. It reminded her of Ghana, of simpler times, of home. As they climbed the hill toward the villa, she was quiet, taking it all in, not daring to hope yet. When they pulled up, the house looked small, quaint, deceptive, until they walked inside. 13-foot ceilings, an open floor plan, a spiral staircase, 7 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a private pool overlooking the endless Caribbean. She cried, tears she couldn't hide. She ran back inside into his arms and kissed him like a woman seeing her husband for the first time. For 10 days they lived without fear, laughing, dancing, making love with reckless, youthful abandon. No arguments, no tension, just peace. Every morning she sat beside him as he worked from the balcony. No PTO, no boss, no begging for time off, just freedom, just possibility. And he showed her, not told, showed her, we can live like this every day. She kissed him on the cheek, smiled like she used to, and for a moment the dream lived. He pulled out the camera gently. It took some coaxing, some gentle persistence, some patience born from love. But finally, in the soft golden light of a St. Lucian morning, she agreed to sit in front of the camera. There was no script, no marketing pitch. Just her, standing barefoot in the garden, the Caribbean breeze playing with the edges of her dress. She spoke about the plants, the healing properties of the fruits and herbs that grew wild around them, not as a doctor, not as a businesswoman, just as herself, a daughter of the earth, remembering what her father had taught her under the hot Ghanaian sun. It was beautiful, it was raw, it was healing in every sense of the word. Behind the camera, Malock smiled, not because it was perfect, not because it was polished, but because it was real. It was the beginning of something they could build together. A life woven from healing, authenticity, and faith. He captured it all, with his hands steady on the camera, with his heart steady on the dream. This wasn't just content, it was restoration. He even flew his drone over the sparkling water, capturing footage he would later use for the brand he was quietly building in his mind. Always building, always believing, waiting for her to see what he saw. The trip home felt shorter somehow. Maybe it was the peace that had settled between them. Maybe it was the quiet hope that this was truly a new beginning. After they landed in Phoenix, they walked together through the terminal, rolling their luggage behind them. The desert sun glared through the windows, but inside, the cool hum of the airport wrapped around them. They sat down for a moment, catching their breath before heading home. No connecting flight, just them, just home. And as they sat there, she leaned in close, her voice low, almost shy. "I think I want to start my YouTube channel." He didn't show the explosion of joy inside him. He didn't boast. He didn't gloat. He just smiled, calm, steady, grateful. "All praises," he said quietly. Because in that moment, in that simple whispered sentence, it felt like maybe, just maybe, they were finally starting to build something that would last. Over the next 2 years, they moved like a team, a unit. Finally, after all the storms, the doubts, the buried memories of betrayal, they were moving in the same direction. They spent countless days and late nights building content together, documenting her journey through medical school, the ups, the exhaustion, the breakthroughs. She didn't give medical advice, but she gave something just as valuable: hope, perspective, small daily insights that helped people enrich their lives, feel healthier, feel seen. And every time she stepped in front of the camera, every time she talked about the healing properties of plants, shared a tip about stress relief, or smiled with that natural light in her eyes, Malock stood behind the lens, steady, proud, invisible to the world, but very much present. He built the websites, he edited the videos, he optimized the content, all the invisible infrastructure necessary to give her voice a home. They weren't just building an audience, they were building a brand, a future. And in the quiet moments between shooting videos and uploading blog posts, they were rebuilding their marriage too. The laughter started coming back, the small touches, the easy conversations. To the outside world, they were becoming the power couple Malock had envisioned years earlier. Husband and wife, vision and execution, heart and strategy. Their online presence was growing. Emails started coming in, messages from people asking when she would open her practice. Patients already waiting in line before the doors were even ready. The momentum was undeniable. She was a few months away from graduating. They were on the cusp of something real, something permanent. A kingdom they could rule together. It felt like all the sacrifices were finally paying off. The patience, the nights sleeping in fear, the days of being doubted, judged, questioned. All of it was finally about to be redeemed. But just as the dream was sharpening into focus, life, as it always had for Malock, threw a stone through the window. It happened in a single week. First, the car accident, a split second that could have ended everything. And then, the unthinkable. He lost his job. 2 catastrophic blows in a matter of days. 2 strikes that would set off a chain of events even he, with all his foresight, couldn't have fully prepared for. He didn't know it yet, but the foundations he thought were now unshakable. were about to be tested in ways he could have never imagined.